All right, just so everybody knows, you may have seen it already, you may not. I don't know how often you go and take a look at your email, but I sent you a thing yesterday. It's what we've gone over in class. So your homework for Chapter 9 will be to complete Exercise 1, that hockey player, complete Parts A and B for Exercise 6. I already gave you a hard copy for Part A, so you'll have to include the stuff for Part B, and that's very similar to what we're going to go over in just a minute. And I want you to complete all the debugging exercises. With most of those debugging exercises, they should be things that stand out. They're just not normal things. All right? So, on the handout that I gave you, there is the person class, all right, and then there's main. So the first thing I want to do is just very quickly go over the person class and talk about what changed in here. What's going to happen, and I'm going to run this for you in a second, is what you'll see is when we get done, I'll put in, there's 6 people or 6 persons, whatever you want to say. So I'll put in the 6, and then it'll print out everything exactly the way that I put them in. But then if you look up on the screen here, because these are the important parts, you have to add this, the colon comparable, all right, which means that this extends from the class iComparable. So you'll have to put that in yours, and when you do that, you will also have to write this routine, this compare to routine. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. What I did was I took the iComparable routine right out of the book, line for line. The only thing I changed was I used social security number, where in the book I think they used ID number. Other than that, it's exactly the same. But you'll see, and I want to run this for you just so you see it. All right, so enter employee number 1, first name. And I'm going to put in here, you can't put dashes in here now. You cannot. All right, so I'm just going to put in here 88888. I know that's not a real social security number, but it's fine. Height 72, weight 225, eye color blue, hair color brown, gender M. So that's the first employee. So you can see that. You'll be able to see all of it in just a minute. All right, so that's the first one. Second one. So you'll notice I'm putting 5 8s and then 5 7s. So if they're in ascending order, when we run this, this one, the second one should come before the first one. All right? And then I'm going to purposely put some, again, bad data in, like we talked about before. So for a height, I'll put in 1,000, which doesn't make any sense. For weight, I'll put in 100. All right. This height I'll make valid, but I'll make it invalid weight. All right, so now what I want you to see is if you look up on the screen here, what it does first, and I changed it around so it would print more so you could see all of it a little easier. So those are the ones that we put in originally, 888-777, 111, 222, 555, and 444. Then I told it to go and sort it based on the social security numbers. So notice how it changes. 111, 222, 444, 45678, 777, 888. Does that make sense? Just taking a look at it. because that's what you're supposed to do for number 6, but rather than using a social security number, I think you're doing it on taxable income or something like that. I don't know if it's taxes or whatever. Yes.
I was going to ask, is it any different doing an int or a double?
It shouldn't be, no. But it's expecting it to be a numeric field. When I tried doing it on a string, it wouldn't take it. So it should be just fine taking it like that. So when you look in here, I just want to take this from the top. I had to make changes to get this to work, and I want to show you a few things. All right? First of all, for whatever reason, C# does not have a thing in there that checks to see if something is numeric or not. It does not have an is numeric. Does that make sense to everybody? So you either have to write your own or you have to borrow one. What does that mean? I borrowed one. What does that mean? That means that I went up here and in the code, I went over to project, was it project? Where is it? One of these in here says references. I don't remember which one right now, but one of them says references. And if I do that, add reference under project. All right, these are all different things that you can add. Well, I know because I've taught it before, I wouldn't expect you to know this, but since I taught it before, I know that Visual Basic actually has an is numeric feature. So what I can do is I can tell it to go in and add, get rid of this. So I told it to go out there and add that Microsoft Visual Basic right there. So all I had to do was check it and then click the OK. Since I already have it, I'm not going to click OK again. Then I had to add this, which meant now anything that's available in Visual Basic, I can use in my program. All right? Such as, well, right there. I wanted to make sure that the social security number was numeric. And that's the way that you can do it. Now, if I didn't do that, I could have written my own routine, but I didn't want to. All right? You may or may not remember, but I did show you this earlier, but I kind of went through it quickly. We looked at a thing with an input box a long time ago, because an input box is another example of something that Visual Basic has that C# does not have. All right. The only reason I'm showing you that, I don't expect you to use that. But the reason I'm showing you that is you'll see stuff like that in code. If you look long enough, you'll see it. So at least you've seen what it was and heard what it was. Again, I'm not saying it's going to totally make a lot of sense to you. But let's talk about what changed in here. So I added that. As I said, you got static system console, but I added this. Then for the person class, notice what I did. This line here, line 14, the default social security number had been a string. So previously it said const string def SSN equals, then in double quotes, you may or may not remember this, it was XXX-XX-XXXX. Now I changed it to an int. Why? Because I want to be able to sort on that field, and it has to be a numeric field. So that's why that was changed. I also put in defaults for the first name and the last name. Last time I just manually hard-coded those in. Now I put those in. This stuff that's right here, that's exactly the same as what you saw before. No changes in anything there that's blue. That's all the same as what we had in the last example of this I gave you. No changes in this. That's exactly the same. All right? But I had to go basically in here and make changes to all of these, because when you work with arrays, it's a little bit different than when you don't work with arrays. So what I basically did was in the set routine each time, I had to manually go in and check to see if it was blank. If it wasn't blank, I said accept whatever value you put in there. But if it was blank, I said set it to DEF, or default first name, which was unknown FN. Now I didn't show that, but had I run it, and I can run it again, had I left those blank, all right, then you would have seen that. The defaults all do work. Took a little bit of finagling to get them all to work. Then I had to do a similar thing with the last name. Again, in English, this is saying whatever value I passed in, if it's not blank, accept it. If it is blank, set it to the default. So I did that for the first name, for the last name, but then there was more work to do with the social security number, and that's right here. So I said, if it's numeric, because it had to be numeric to begin with, and it's greater than 0, and it's less than, because I figured in a social security number there's number, dash, number, dash, number, which is like 9 digits. All right, and that's what we have here. So I said the biggest one that you could put in would be 999, 999, 999. All right, now I could have set it up. I don't think social security numbers can start with 0, but I didn't remember. All right, but I could have said, for example, that it had to be greater than or equal to 111, 111, 111, or something like that. But I just set it up like this. All right, that's why it will even take single digits in here, which I know aren't valid for social security numbers. But if it meets both these criteria, all right, so if it's both numeric and it falls within that range, then accept it. Otherwise, set it to the default, which again was all zeros. Then height, that's exactly what we had last time, except I have to use value. Remember what value is? That's the number that gets passed in. All right, so there's value here, here, and here. Same thing with weight. Value here, here, and here. And notice, I only have one height and I only have one weight, because we already have the value read in or not read in because we put it in an array. All right. Then the eye color, same kind of thing. As long as it wasn't blank, accept it. Otherwise, set it to the default, which I made orange, or a bloodshot, I guess that was. And for the hair color, if it wasn't blank, accept it. Otherwise, make the default hair color. That was orange. And the gender, again, if it wasn't blank, accept it. Otherwise, all right, use the default. Okay? So this just displayed everything. This wasn't changed at all. This was exactly the same as what we saw before. And this was what I mentioned. So this routine that you see right here, all right, it's in your book. And it's on the bottom of page 404 in the program that's on page 404. I took that, again, directly from out of the book. All right? So, main, what did I do? Well, I said let's create a constant integer, num persons. We set it to 6. Then I set up an array of 6 people. But there's nothing in that array right now. All right, all I've done basically is just declare it. Then I've got this string that's just going to hold a temporary value if I need it. So I tried to put some comments in here. Create an array of 6 empty person objects. All right, so basically creates the array. This is where we're instantiating the object, so that will be person 0, person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4, and person 5. Then we tell you to enter their first name and allow you to enter it, enter their last name and allow you to enter it, enter their social security number, enter their height, enter their weight, enter their eye color, enter their hair color, and enter their gender. Now with the gender, I tried to put a little bit more in here. If you look up on the screen here, if you remember, this is kind of like what I've shown you earlier when we ask if you want to run the program again, type in a Y or an N. Well, for the gender, what's to stop somebody from typing in male as opposed to M, or female as opposed to F, or unknown, or whatever? All right? So what this said was, hey, if the length is greater than or equal to 1, just grab the first character. All right? Otherwise, and you'll notice I didn't set it to the default. For some reason, it didn't like that, so I hard-coded it in with an F. All right, it was one thing I was going to look at, and I just didn't get back to. So this will print them all out. So this prints them out in their original order. Then we say to sort it. And that is actually going to sort it based on the Social Security numbers. And the code right here and the code right here is identical. But here, we printed them out in original order, so I could say print these out, print out all 6 objects, original order. And this one says print out all 6 objects, ascending order based on Social Security number. All right, and that's it. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say, well, does that totally make sense? It might not make a lot of sense, but you're going to have to take a look at that before it'll start making some sense. All right, let's take a break. Let's come back at 9:15, and we're going to go over Chapter 10. Yes?
So you didn't have to click and add an interface like you would have.
Did I have to add an interface? No.
That's what the book was confusing me. I thought like it was saying you had to.
Well, we're going to talk about that in the next chapter, but when you talk about inheritance, okay, when you think about genetic inheritance, at least supposedly you get half of your genetic inheritance from your mother, half of your genetic inheritance from your father. That's the way it's supposed to work. That would mean that you inherit from 2 different parents. But in code, in this language, you can only inherit from 1 parent. All right? But sometimes you want to inherit more than just as in what's in 1 parent. You can only inherit from 1 parent, but you can set up as many interfaces as you want. We're going to talk about what those are in the next chapter. And you can basically inherit, it's not called inherit, it's implement as many interfaces as you want to implement. That's how you get around that. Not C sharp, but C++ is one of the few languages that actually allows you to have multiple inheritance. It can be very confusing to have that, which is why most languages don't let you have it.